And it's a wonderful privilege to be back with Lil Shishi. We haven't learned in a number of weeks for various reasons. There was Hanukkah, there was post-Hanukkah, there was the Aleinu conference last week for Jewish Futures Chevra. And so it's just a privilege to be back here preparing for Shabbos together, the Pnimius. It's very special for me, I think for all of us, to have my Chami Mayri, my Shver, my father-in-law here with us. Yes, all heads turned to the back. That's where he likes to be. And I'm going to try to string together a few coherent sentences in his honor. Siyata d'Shmaya. Okay, so let's jump into the content that we have tonight. This text from Rav Kluger, who, like we mentioned with some of the Chevra, is a mashpia in Beit Shemesh, who is a bit of an interesting story. He started off, I think, Ger or one of the other Hasidisin, got super into Chabad for a couple of years, and then in Uman announced that he's becoming Breslev, and half of the Kehillah left, and he attracted another half of a different Kehillah. Now he's just a wondrous blend of things. And his Sfarim are very, very unique, super popular and very unique. And they are a very special blend of Nigla, as we're going to see, halachas, gemaras, shitas, and paiskim, and then using that as a foundation to understand Inyanim b'pnimius, the neshama of Torah, beyond the surface, that ultimately leave us with a tremendous blend, a wondrous blend of things that I find to be very stimulating intellectually, but also spiritually, emotionally, to help us prepare for Shabbos ba'omek, which is our ultimate goal, b'siyata d'shmaya, with the help of Hashem. So let's jump into it. We're continuing our phase of this series, which we're up to, which is dealing with Hadlakas Ner Shabbos, with the inyan of lighting Shabbos candles. We had 2 shiurim, and it's so far, the last shiur was over Hanukkah, where we contrasted the energy of the Menorah candles with the candles of Shabbos. We spoke about that, Alpi Pnimius. And now let's take a look at the Tzaddik's teaching over here. So we're going to try to go through it. It's a little bit lengthy. We'll try to go through it with a good pace so that we can see it till the end, see it through, and hopefully we'll have time at the end for discussion and any insights that anybody has in the style of the Chabura that we try to maintain with Hashem's help. Okay, so let's jump in. B'siyata d'Shmaya. Nimsa b'makom sheyesh ar pater me'adlaka. It begins with a segment that's entitled that if a person is found in a place where there is already light, pater me'adlaka, he is pater. He does not need to light Shabbos candles. Al pidin, there's no chiyuv. Isa b'Gemara, he says, it's brought in the Gemara in Shabbos, hadlakas ner b'Shabbos choiva. The Gemara says that lighting Shabbos candles is a chiyuv, is an obligation. Upershu HaTosfos, and the Heilige Tosfos writes, where does this chiyuv come from? How do we know it's obligatory for one to light or have lit in the house or the place where he's staying, as we're going to see, Shabbos candles? And he brings Sheyesod chiyuv hadlaka hu midivrei Mishnah. We find already in the Mishnah roots for this kind of obligation to go ahead and to light Shabbos candles in our house. That was the first shiur. Some of the Chevra remember we talked about kavod and oineg in our Hashulchan and the Griz. We talked about Estir and Rambam. We had a whole exploration of what exactly is Shabbos candles. What category do they fall under? Is it kavod Shabbos? Is it honoring Shabbos? Is it oneg Shabbos, the light of Shabbos? And we had a whole exploration of that. And so he says over here that ultimately it's rooted in the Mishnah. And the Mishnah says, Al shalosh averos nashim meses b'shas leidasan. Nebuch, there are 3 things that women would ultimately pass away during child labor, during childbirth, during labor, bringing children into the world for 3 reasons. Al she'enan nisharos, because they were not zihiros, careful enough, benida, bechalu, uvadlakas haner, these 3 mitzvahs that are specific to women. It's interesting, I saw once, I believe it's from either the Chazan Ish or one of the later Achreinim. I saw that he writes in response to a question that asked, like, why don't you see that so many of the things that the Gemara talks about happening for this reason or another reason, they don't really happen. There are plenty of women that aren't careful with lighting Shabbos candles. They don't die in childbirth, and there are many women that are, and different things happen to them. And the answer that he gave, which is pretty interesting, was to say that it used to be at a time where there was less hiddenness on the part of Hashem, when there was less concealment, we were able to see these things. Mamash, they happened. He says, we are not zoche to this. He says it's an extra level of concealment that we don't even see the punishment, so to speak, taking place, because that might also strengthen our emunah in a way that maybe we're not zoche to. So we live in darkness. That's our state. We live in a tremendous state of concealment that even this we don't see. But Al Kapanim, we see in the Mishnah that there's a pretty strong, it's pretty serious, obviously. If it's a life or death issue, it must be, says Tosfos, a chiv, it must be obligatory. That the Mishnah would go so far as to say that this could be a cause for a person dying. If they're not careful in doing this, it has to be obligatory. The Takana Zu, the Chinuch counts this among the 7 mitzvos derabanan, which added to the 613 mitzvahs d'oraisa equal, of course, 620, which is gematria keser, which is keser yitnu l'cha. Kadosh Baruch Hu gave us the crowns by Har Sinai. Crown is gematria 620, 613 plus the 7 mitzvahs d'Rabbanan, and this is among them. So now he says, fine, there's a chiyuv. It's obligatory. We know from the Gemara. We see a source from the Mishnah. But if a tamei shel davar, what's the reason? Why is it so important for us to light Shabbos candles, to have Shabbos candles lit in our homes going into Shabbos? Because for Rishonim, he says he brings from the Rishonim, Mishum Shalom bayis, K'mashmas Gemara. The Gemara implies that it's because of this concept of Shalom bayis, peace in the house, peace. There should be close relationships among the family members on Shabbos. And he develops this from the Gemara that says also in Shabbos, Ner Beisai v'Kiddush Hayom, Ner Beisai Adif. That if you had the choice to either spend money on candles for Shabbos or to spend money on Kiddush, Ner Shabbos comes first, even before Kiddush. Amazing thing. Kiddush is how we sanctify the day. Kiddush is, we're Mekadesh Shabbos with Kiddush. He says Shabbos candles go first. Uperish Rashi. And Rashi comments on these words of the Gemara that answer why is this? Mishum Shalom Beisai. Because Neira Shabbos have this special inyan of Shalom Bayis. They bring peace in the house. Rashi explains, what does this mean? That candles add to the peace that we're able to have in the house, that spirit of serenity on Shabbos. Uperish Rashi. Shelo yu b'nei habayis mitztarin l'Shabbos b'choshech. So that people shouldn't experience the pain of having to sit in a dark room where you can't see anything. And he says, people are going to walk, they're going to trip over things, they're going to bang into tables, they're going to bang into each other, they're going to cause each other to spill the chicken soup all over the place, he's going to be fighting. That's not the spirit of Shabbos. Shabbos, we need or. We need light. We need the room to be lit up with an illumination that can encourage and make a space for serenity, for peace, which in a very deep way means where we can see each other, where we can interact in a way that you're not bumping into me, I'm not bumping into you. There's space for each of us, there's clarity. Isn't this what Shabbos is? Shabbos is all about understanding our place in the world. Shabbos is the tachlis ma'aseh shemayim va'aretz. It's the ultimate pinnacle of the reason that Hashem created the world in the first place. It's the purpose for all of this. And if I have a purpose on Shabbos, then I have a place, and you have a place. And we can't have on Shabbos darkness and confusion. Shabbos is the opposite of this. So we need on Shabbos, just on a practical level, that the house should be filled with light, because light is the great unifier. Light enables us to see, and we can get along, and we can make sure that we're not chas v'shalom interacting in such a way that's going to disturb the stillness of Shabbos. Like the Zohar Kadosh says, Lo sevar eish b'chol ma'shvei seichem b'yom HaShabbos. The pasuk tells us we can't light a fire on Shabbos, which the derivative of which, of course, is electricity and so on. But the Zohar says, you know what it means? The Torah says, don't light a fire on Shabbos. He says, fire is anger. He says, make sure, do not kindle the fire of anger on Shabbos. And there are ample opportunities. If a person has a certain consciousness, you want your Shabbos to be able to look a certain way, and you want to be able to have it this way and this way. The most important thing, no anger on Shabbos. That's what the Zohar says. Lo sevar eish b'chol ma'shvei seichem b'yom HaShabbos. On Shabbos, it has to be ragua. It has to be calm. It has to be calm. Anger comes from the place of wanting things to be a certain way, and if they're not, then the misalignment with my ideal vision of reality and the way that things are actually playing out causes me to become angry. Right? That's what anger means. And Shabbos is the hepech of that. Shabbos is, Chazal tell us, ki ilu kol melachtecha asuya. Everything's done already. There's nothing else to do. Just be. Just be. Be a human being, not a human doing, which we so often are during the 6 days of the week. We're doing. Shabbos is not about that. Even the Hasidic masters teach, the tzaddikim teach, even beruchni, spiritually speaking. When we come into Shabbos, it's not about striving. It's not about trying to get to a place that's beyond my current level. It's about literally feeling, ki ilu kol melachtecha asuya. I have a shining essence inside of me that's already enough. And if we can tap into that on Shabbos and just be, and delight in that, us to sanag al Hashem, that's the oinig of Shabbos. And then we go back into the week. We have to strive again. But on Shabbos, it's supposed to be still. No anger, no feeling of dissonance between what I want to be and what is what I want to be. And what I want to be already is. And that's the Indian of Shabbos needing shalom, Shabbos needing a setting where we can see each other, we understand you have a purpose, I have a purpose, we're working together toward the ultimate purpose of the world, which we're able to taste on Shabbos. Shalom bayis. Vihine. So here he asks a kasha, which is pretty strong. He says, what is going on with Shabbos candles? Think of it. Shemitzad echad, on one hand, al pi halacha, hu chiyuv gavra. On the one hand, it appears to be a chiyuv, an obligation on the person, right? Meaning I have an obligation to light Shabbos candles. Now, it doesn't fall on me. In my current situation, Chaz Hashem, it falls on my wife. Why? He brings ala isha. The obligation falls on the woman to light Shabbos candles. Shalamut ala chiyuv midin kedima, as it says in Shulchan Aruch, and the Zohar Kodesh has another few takes actually on why the woman dafka is lighting Shabbos candles. I'll be pneumius, but it says in Shulchan Aruch, kedima. This is her place. This is her setting. Hanashim muzharis bayoser. They are the ones that are commanded to go ahead and to light the Shabbos candles for the house. Because that's they're there. This is her domain, and so this is her tchum. The chiyuv is on the isha to light Shabbos candles coming into Shabbos. That's on one hand. On the one hand, it seems like what's called in halacha a chiyuv gavra. It's an obligation on her, right? On us, on the ish, on the person. But umitzad sheni, on the other side of the coin, hu chiyuv ala bayis. It's not obligatory on the person. It's obligatory for the house to be lit, not for the person to be lighting. Where does he prove this from? If you have a person who, the wife or the mother or whoever's in charge of lighting the candles in that particular household already lit the candles, the nimtza b'makom she'ishar, he comes home from work on late Friday, comes into the house and he sees Shabbos candles are lit, right? You can light even earlier. It has to be after a certain period of time, so it's close enough to Shabbos. It goes back to our first shiur because that's the covet of Shabbos, and then the oinig kicks in. The house is full of light. That's it. It's lit. So what's the chiyuv? Is the chiyuv that I need to light, or is the chiyuv that the house has to have light, in which case it has nothing to do with any obligation on the individual himself? Kinivsik b'Shulchan Aruch, and he proves this from the Shulchan Aruch, which says that mishu eitzel ishta, if a person is with his wife in the house, ein sarich lahadlik b'chadrei v'levarich alav. He does not need to light Shabbos candles in his room and to make a bracha on it. Levisha ishta mevareches b'shvilai, because his wife already made a bracha and she already lit, and that's it. The house is already lit up. Ubir achronim, and achronim explain, dahainu lefisha nimtza b'makom sheishar. We're obviously talking about a circumstance in a situation where there already is light, because if there was no light, then he has to light. But if it's in a place where there's light and his wife already lit, that's it. It doesn't concern him at all as an individual to be involved in lighting this act of lighting Shabbos candles. That's not the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to ensure that we have light in the house on Shabbos. And all the while that that's been done, there's no chiyuv gavra on the person. Nifter mechiv gavra shalei badlakas isha. So his wife lit, and now he doesn't need to light. But wait a second, we found that it is obligatory on her to light. So he says over here, l'chayre ina muvan. He says there's a problem here. Because look at the lashon of the Shulchan Aruch. Let's read it again. Mishu hu eitzel ishtay. If a person is in the house and is with his wife, ein sarich lahadlik b'chadja v'levarich alav. He does not need to light in his room and to make a bracha on it. Why? And here he doesn't say because there's already light, which the achronim say that it's talking about a case where it's lit. He could very easily say that and we'd understand it, of course, because our job is to make sure that on Shabbos there's light. Now, that doesn't happen on its own. Someone needs to do that. Okay, so the Isha lights Shabbos candles. Now, the Shulchan Aruch could easily say he's patur from the chiyuv of lighting. Why? Because there's already light in the house, but it doesn't say that. Look at what it says. Because she made the bracha for him. I don't understand. She made the bracha for, so he does have a chiyuv, and if he did have a chiyuv, where do we find in halacha such a thing? That someone could be yotzeh someone else without that person being there, without that person having intentionality to have been yotzeh by that person? What's going on? And here he asks this question, he says, it seems to be challenging to understand how like tachlis hadlaka hu mibnei shalom bayis. What's the purpose of the mitzvah of adlakas ner Shabbos? We already said there should be light in the house. That's the mitzvah. That's the reason for the mitzvah. The imkain gam im ein madlikan alav yipater me'adlaka. Therefore, again, even if his wife didn't have it in mind, and even if she didn't light for him, he has no chiyuv. There's light in the house. And again, if their taka is some level of obligation on this individual now to light, so then my yoyel mashem adlikan alav. So what does it help that she already lit? It's his chiyuv. So how do we understand this? Is the lighting of Shabbos candles a chiyuv gavra, or is it a chiyuv chefza on the uvda, on the situation and the circumstance that there is to be light in the house? Which is it? He goes into another area of halacha in Hilchas Neiros Shabbos. He says another question we can ask b'takana zu regarding this takana of lighting Shabbos candles. We find in the Paiskim, turn over the page, Kuf Mem Dalet. We find in the Paiskim, in the halachic literature, that there's a chiluk, there's a distinction between Ner Shabbos and Ner Yantev. There's a distinction between these two kinds of Shabbos, these two kinds of lighting in honor of what is to be, whether it's Shabbos or Yantev, a distinction. What is the distinction? There are a number of them. Reishis Kol, first of all, he says, Shitas Rishonim. There's a Shita in the Rishonim, Shadlakas Haner Be'erev Yantev Eina Chiyuv, that there's absolutely no Chiyuv of lighting at all. Yantev candles, which of course we don't paskin like, but that's what they learned, that there's no lighting at all. Ulachayre Eina Muvan, and he says, even if it's not obligatory, but we do it, still, why not? Why is Yantev any different than Shabbos? Presumably on Yantev we don't either want it to be dark, and presumably on Yantev there are plenty of bowls of chicken soup or any other kind of soup that we don't want spilled. Why should Yantev be different than Shabbos? If it's because of Shalom bayis, like Rashi tells us, you should eat the Suda in a place where there's light. Why wouldn't that apply to Yantev as well? Why only Shabbos? Ma hevdel bein Shabbos li Yantev. Why should there be a distinction between Shabbos and Yantev? And in the brackets he writes, Ubi yoiser ikshel l'divrei Rashi. This is even more challenging when we see this through the lens of Rashi, where Rashi says in the Gemara in Shabbos, Chafei Amid Beis, Shekal adlakas neiros eina ela shei suuda toiva. That the main thing is not even stumbling around and falling over each other in different rooms. The main thing is the eating. The main thing is the su'uda, that you should eat in the place where there's light. And this is sourced in the Gemara in Yuma, where the Gemara says that the only completion of eating a su'uda, and all of us have experienced this, it's a very different experience when when it's pitch black and you're eating, when you can see the steak. I mean, the seeing it is really part of the experience. So the Gemara in Yuma says there's no shleimus for eating a su'uda if it's dark. So Rashi says the ikr of having Neiros Shabbos, light in the room on Shabbos, is for what? For the su'uda. Shemadlik or, you light a candle, or you turn on the lights. V'royas hamachalim, you can see the food. And that's what the Gemara says in a different place. Blind people never have soveh, they're never completely satisfied. Because an element of eating is not just the taste and the chewing and the satiation in the stomach, it's seeing the food, that's a big part of it. Umavur, see, he says, well, in accordance with this, it seems that the lighting of Shabbos candles is for what purpose? They should enjoy the su'uda. That's what Rashi is telling us. That's the ultimate purpose of Shabbos candles, even more than this that we're bumping into each other, anything like this. It's the su'uda that we want to illuminate. That the su'uda of Shabbos should be in its full completion. He says, well then, why on Yantev is it going to be any less? On the contrary, this reason should apply on Yantev even more than it does on Shabbos. Why? Should be Yantev yesh din simcha be'etzem ha'su'uda. Because on Yantev there's a mitzvah di'araisa, v'samachta b'chagecha. And where's the simcha? Says the Gemara, in simcha ella be'basar v'yayim. That means that the primary simchas hayoyim, even more than Shabbos in a way. Shabbos is a din from the Nevi'im of Oinik Shabbos, right? But this is mamacha mitzvah sasei di'araisa. When does that take place? By the Su'uda. How are you going to tell me that it's more important to light candles on Shabbos so that the Su'uda should be enjoyable, ignoring the fact that on Yantev the main mitzvah d'oraisa is the eating, and we seem not to care about there being light in the room? How could this be? Kenifsa Rambam, as the Rambam paskins in Uchashisis Yantev, va'anoshim oichlim basar v'shaysen yayin, right? That we're entitled and we're expected to eat proper food, basar and yayin. On Yantev, she'ein simcha, like we just quoted, ela b'basa ve'ein simcha, ela b'yayin. That's another question, right? The chilik between the chiyuv vis-a-vis Shabbos and vis-a-vis Yantev. Why is there a distinction between them? Why should the lighting of candles, if it's about Shalom Bayis, be any less or any different by Yantev than it is by Shabbos? And he ends this particular segment, before we get into the answers, with one final point about the chilik between Shabbos and Yantev that has to do with Kabbalah Shabbos, with Shabbos coming in, the moment that the person goes ahead and lights Shabbos candles, which we know that's when our wives, that's when our mothers, right? That's when Jewish women bring in Shabbos. And he's going to say that there's a distinction between what goes on by Shabbos when we light those candles and what goes on by Yantev. Oyer Matzinu, he says, B'dini Adlakas Haner Be'erev Shabbos, we find that there's also a distinction between the lighting of the candles on Erev Shabbos and lighting candles Erev Yantev. Shemaisa hahadlaka eitzel isha hi ka'anias baruch amiras bayichala eitzel ish. What our Kabbalah Shabbos is Friday night in Shul, when we say Baruch, or when we're Makabel Shabbos, different shitas, and that's when it's Shabbos for us, l'chaladeas. Lighting Shabbos candles for the Isha accomplishes the same thing. Effectively, what she means to say is, right now I am being Makabel Shabbos upon myself. Va'achar ha'adlaka kibla Shabbos. After she lights, done, finished. It's Shabbos now. Ukfar asura b'asiyas malacha. She can't do any malacha anymore. Kenivsa b'shulchan aruch because of her amah. She can't aminug. Sha'oisa isha hamadlekas mekabela Shabbos ba'adlaka. That's how we paskin. From that moment, Shabbos l'chol inyan. But in Me'idach, he says, ba'adlakas haner be'erev yantev eina din kain. We don't find the same thing applying by hadlakas neris yantev. Ki amnam nifsak la'alacha k'shari shoinim. We find, yes, that we paskin, like we mentioned, lahalacha, like the other Rishonim that hold there is a chiyuv. Chiyuv hadlaka be'erev yantiv shabbos Shabbos, that we have just as much an obligation, of course, all of our wives and mothers and Jewish women are lighting neiros on erev yantiv just like they light on erev Shabbos, as all of us know, and we paskin this way. But he says, it's not completely the same. And we already highlighted a couple of reasons why not. But he says it's not the same. Shari the Shabbos hadlaka kademis lebracha. On Shabbos, what does the woman do? She lights first, and then she makes the bracha. Ube erev yantiv habracha kademis. On erev yantiv, it's flipped. She makes the bracha first, and then she lights. Why? Well, let's put it this way. Why does the woman make the bracha? Why does the woman, light first on Erev Shabbos and then make the bracha? Based on what we've been saying. Because if she would make the bracha first, what happens? She's Makabel Shabbos, and now she's not able to light anymore. Because like we said, by Shabbos, the lighting is the bracha, and the act of going ahead and engaging in lighting Shabbos candles is Kabbalah Shabbos. Therefore, we have a minhag, and it developed into many other things. But halachically, the minhag is that the Isha covers her eyes, right? Or she's really supposed to either cover the flame, right? Or to make sure that she's not seeing and having hana from the light. Then she makes the bracha, and then she uncovers her eyes. And it's as if, ki'ilu, it's over la'asiyasa. It's as if she had made the bracha before lighting, which is ordinarily when we make a bracha before we're doing a mitzvah, like putting on tefillin, or wearing tzitzis, or shaking lulav, that's an interesting one actually with the esrog. But regular mitzvahs, we make the bracha when? Before the act. But over here, she can't. Because if she made the bracha, she can't light anymore because it's Shabbos. So we figured out some way where she lights, covers her eyes, makes the bracha, uncovers her eyes, and that's ke'ein oivelasiyasan. But by Yantev, you don't find that. Why? Because by Yantev, she's not being mekabel Yantev when she lights. There's no such thing. Ke'ein mekablin Yantev ba'adlaka. Karach is a Mishabura Sham. He says, take a look at the Mishabura there. And therefore, like I just mentioned, she does not effectively need, they still do, but they don't really halachically need to cover their eyes when they're lighting candles Erev Yantiv, because halachically that particular reason doesn't apply. Ein sarich litin hayadayim, they don't need to put their hands over their eyes. Eitz aleinayim kanag b'Shabbos, as is the minhag by lighting Shabbos candles. The reason, like we just explained, that they would do this, and they do this on Shabbos, is and then in some way it should be as if she's making the bracha before doing the mitzvah, even though again she already did the mitzvah. Covering her eyes, she's not seeing it, opens her eyes, okay, it's as if now she lit, right? So in some way it's over l'asiyasa. Because she's lighting before she's making the bracha, and therefore we need to do this to cover her eyes. But he says, but just like on Chanukah, where the lighting is after the bracha, we make the brachas first and then we light. I've actually been talking about that too. But most of us paskin that we light after we make the bracha, like any other mitzvah where you make the bracha first and then you do the maisa. That's what we do by the lighting of the neiros of Yantev. And he says, therefore, ein makam l'min egzeh. There's no makam for this because it's already arba l'asiyasa. And finally, again, this question of l'chayre ein muvan. How are we to understand this inyan of Shabbos candles? If it's all about the shalom bayis that R brings into a house, we said it should theoretically apply for Yantev, and even more by Yantev, because like we said, the su'udah of Yantev is a mitzvah say d'oraisa, and the ikar R is for the su'udah, it should apply by Yantev. And more than that, why should the neiros of Shabbos be any more emblematic of our accepting upon ourselves Shabbos, bringing Shabbos in, than it is by Yantev? Again, if lighting these candles is an expression of the holiness of this day, there's no logical reason that Yantev should be any different than Shabbos in this regard. This is his presentation, al pi halacha. Okay, and now we launch, and now he goes in to the chelek hapnimius of it, slowly, step by step, is Siyata D'Shmaya. Or HaShabbos, the light of Shabbos. And if here he's not referring to the light that the candle brings physically to the house, he's speaking about the Or of Shabbos, what Shabbos is, this illumination of Shabbos. Uliyashiv calls it, he says, let's try to understand the unique nature of Shabbos candles. Navi Midivrei Gemara, he says, we'll bring from the Gemara also in Shabbos, Lamedalet Amid Aleph Hadivrei Mishnah, that the Mishnah tells us, Shloisha Dvarim Sarach Adam Loimer B'Seich Beisei Erev Shabbos Im Chashecha. There are three things that a person needs to ask in his household before Shabbos, that the man of the house needs to ask, to check, to make sure that these three things were done. Iravtem, or rather, Isartem first, Iravtem, and Adlikos Haner. Did you take Meiser? Did you set up an Erev? And did you light the candles? These three things that we need to say before Shabbos. Where do we learn this from? And they bring this, or before that, all right. V'hiksha, and the Gemara asks, Minahani Mili, where do we know that these three things we need to ask? V'taimar, or V'tiritz, the Gemara answers, Amr Bishul ben Levi, Amar Kra. He brings a pasuk in Iyov. The pasuk says, V'yadata ki shalom ayalecha. You shall know that there's peace in your tent. Ufakadata navach v'lo sechte. Which on a literal level, if you look in Rashi, there means, and you shall command upon your household v'lo sechte, and there shall be no sin there. But the other Mefarshim learned that navach is a reference to one's wife. And so uvakadata navach means that there are certain things that the husband is required to guide his wife and direct her, make sure that she's careful about these things. V'lo sechte, so you shouldn't come to be in a situation of sin where something's missing on Shabbos. What are the three things that the woman needs to take care of? The lighting of the Shabbos candles, the taking Meiser, the making of the Erev, that's her tchum. And so we find, upakadata navach, the Gemara says, we need to check Erev Shabbos by the wives that they're taking care of these three things. Upirish Rabbi Chananel says, Minola and Tzarech, he explains the Gemara, Minola and Tzarech hadlakas ner b'Shabbos. How do you find that there needs to be hadlakas ner on Shabbos? And he brings this pasuk. So he brings this pasuk for more than just you need to make sure that she's doing it. That's what the Gemara brought it for, right? That it's bringing a source. How do you know that the husband has to say anything to his wife? Check by her anything before Shabbos. Okay, we have a pasuk of Hakata to Navach. The way he phrases it is very different, and it's very crucial to hear the difference in the way that he presents it, because he doesn't ask, how do we know that the husband needs to check these things by his wife? He asks, Minolan ditzarich hadlaka ner b'Shabbos. Whole different thing. He finds in this pasuk a source that we need to have Shabbos candles at all. And that's a whole different ballgame. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, he brings this verse, V'yadata ki shalom ayalecha, you shall know that there's peace in your tent. And he brings V'ein shalom ela ba'ar, and there's no peace without light. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, V'yar elikim es ha'ar ki toiv. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw that the light was good. And so in these 4 lines of Rabbeinu Hananel, if you know how to read, it's unbelievable because you could gloss over this. Because usually Rabbeinu Hananel is just like bring the Gemara in different words. It's, helps you understand the flow. No. Rabbeinu Hananel does a major work here. First of all, he sees in the pasuk in Eiv a source for Hadlakas Ner Shabbos. And the pasuk in Eiv has the word Shalom in it. And he says, well, what does Shalom have to do with candles? What does Shalom have to do with light? And here he brings a completely unrelated pasuk about light that has the word toiv in it. What's the shaykhis? If he brought a pasuk that had the word shalom and ar, that's one thing. But over here he brings a pasuk that has the word shalom in it. That has the word ar in it and the word tov in it. Good. What's the connection? He's obviously trying to communicate something to us about what Ner Shabbos are. That the peace that the light of the Shabbos candles are bringing into the home is not simply a pragmatic, technical piece that all of a sudden we can see each other, as like I said before, on either a physical level, we don't bump into each other or hurt ourselves and there's not fighting and meriva, or that I see you have a place and I see I have a place and we can get along, because we realize it's not about me or you, but it's about the tachlis ma'aseh shemaim va'aretz. It's far more than that. It's the peace that's resultant from the ar that HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw in Sheishis Yimei Bereshis and says, Vayar Elikim Sa'ar Ki Toiv. What do Chazal say on those words, Ki Toiv? Do you remember Rashi? What did it mean? Hashem saw that the light was good. What was it good for? Says Rashi there, Chazal, it was Toiv L'Gnazai. It was good to hide. It was too good. It was too good for this world. The world it wasn't ready to handle it yet. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu hid that light. So Rav Kluger is about to say that he sees in this Rabbeinu Hananel a whole different take on Ner Shabbos entirely, that takes us out of the realm of the pragmatic halachic understanding of why we need candles in our home with all the intricacies, and he says, wait a second, there's something else here. And those candles that you see when you walk into your home are not simply, even today, it's even more prevalent because b'chalal we have lights in our houses, right? Shabbos candles are more than just a zeicher for the time when they needed this because this, made sure that people didn't trip over each other. No. The Shabbos candles are bringing into our home the Ar Aganas, the light of Vayar Elikim es ha'ar ki toiv. And that light brings peace to the world. Shalom, like we say, Sim Shalom Tov Uvracha v'chule v'chule ki ba'ar panecha nasata lanu Torah Chaim v'avas chesed. There's an aspect of Hashem's presence, ba'ar panecha. Dafka, the face of Hashem, contact with the divine. That's a different kind of peace. That's a different kind of getting along. That's a different experience of light that takes us out of the realm of the physical and into the realm of a completely different place where we're able to bask in the light that's hidden, that's revealed once every 7 days in the light of the Shabbos candles. And here he explains this all. Umavur, he says, let's see what Rabbeinu Hananel is telling us over here, an amazing thing. Shepnimius hatam shenasnu chachamim lechiv hadlakas haner mishum shalom bayis. That, yeah, it's true. We said, well, there's a chiyuv, right? And we learned this from the Mishnah, and Taisus brought it, and the Gemara says this is where we learn the source, that there's an obligation to light Shabbos candles, because 3 things, chas v'shalom, a woman can pass away during childbirth. It's because not being careful with Shabbos candles, it must be pretty important. Then he asked, well, what's the reason for it? Oh, well, the reason for it is shalom bayis. He says that's true and that's good. But now, what's the reason that this is even true in the first place? Why is it that light enables us to have peace with each other? Meaning to say, it's true there's a physical reality that if it's dark, we trip over each other, right? And it's true that there's a physical reality that if you light candles all over the place, we can see, and you walk here and I walk here, and we don't bump into each other. Problem avoided. We don't get angry. We have a peaceful, serene Shabbos. All this is true. But Pnimius HaTorah doesn't deal with just the facts of reality as they are and needing to develop our understanding of them. And within this particular framework, we can figure out how to live and how to keep halacha. Pnimius HaTorah takes us one step further, and it reminds us that if things are the way they are in the physical world, it's because things are the way they are in the spiritual world. And so there's a reason beyond the reason. Meaning, again, on a physical Gashmias level, there's a pragmatic reason called Shalom bayis. You light a candle, darkness goes away, people are at peace. But where does this come from? Where does this whole model of the issue and the solution, darkness, fighting, light, peace, where's the spiritual root for this? Why is this true? Why is this true? That when there's a light, people are able to connect. We understand that from our lived experience of this world, but everything in the world around us has a shirish, has a source in the Seder of Shalshalis, in the chain of creation. We see just a tiny little inch of Hashem's revelation, all the spiritual worlds beyond that are all packed into this world if we have the eyes to be able to see them, like we've been speaking about in these shiur. So he wants to know, what's the depth here? Why does this work? Umavur, let's look inside. Shepnimius hatam shenasnu chachamim l'chiyav adlakas haner mishum shalom bayis. That the deeper reason, for the reason that Chazal gave of shalom bayis for lighting Shabbos candles, hu mipnei or shivas hayom, is because of ayar likim or kitoiv. There's a mitzias of aragonas in the world. There's a mitzias, there's a reality of ki ba'ar panecha nasata lanu. There's a reality of Hashem's presence being able to be sensed in great moments. That is the root of a true deep peace. That's not simply a technical peace where it's like a shared, like a social contract. You don't encroach on my border, I won't encroach on your border. You stay there, I'll stay here, and we're at peace. That's not peace. That's not peace. That's just maybe not in a state of war. Peace is incredibly deep. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Chazal call Hashem as Hishkin Shalom. Hashem is the one, Oiseh Shalom b'mraim, of Hu Yaseh Shalom aleinu. Real peace, to really get in touch with another person, but omek, not just in this technical way that we get along and we don't beat each other up. But mamish ish v'ishtoi zacha, if a husband and wife are lucky, shchina shruya b'neihem. Not that they can live in the same house and they don't yell too much. Shechina shruya beinei. What bonds them? What fills the space between them? What enables them to really lock eyes and hearts and spend time with each other, with serenity, with peace of mind, with true willingness to connect, without a phone buzzing constantly, but mamish, setting aside time to really deeply connect, like under the chuppah connect. That has to be a godly revelation. That has to be kiba'ar panecha nasata lanu. Toras chaim avas chesed tzedakah bracha, like we mentioned. Rachma v'chaim v'shalom. Ba'ar panecha. It's the aragonos. It's the hidden light that Hashem says it's too good for this world. This world is not ready to handle it. We have to hide it. But the chaver that are plugged into this kind of living, we know where it is, and we know how to reveal it, and we know how to use this world as a vessel for coming into contact with a realm beyond. And we learn how to live in moments like the Piasetzner Rebbe writes in Achsharas Avrechim. A Jew needs, like I mentioned Tuesday night, a Jew from time to time needs to fashion ladders that take them beyond, that take them into an experience of Ba'ar Panecha, to bask in the light of Hashem's presence, in the awareness that this moment is different than all the other moments. Manashtana Leila Zeh Mikala Leilos. This is different. Something's different. There's a light in the room. There's a light that enables us to bond. There's a light that enables us to be open, to be vulnerable, to be soulful, not to allow the goof, the body with all of the ego and all of what it brings along with it to get in the way. True connection. Where does it come from? The aragonas. You see what he's doing here? On a physical level, true. You light a candle in a room, people don't fight too much. But he says, Baruch Nia, something much deeper is going on. There's a ruchnius tam. There's a deeper reason for shalom bayis, which is the reason given by Chazal for the lighting of Shabbos candles. You know what that is? Vayar likim ha'ar kitoiv, the aragonas, the hidden light of Hashem's presence, the hidden light of kipa'ar panecha nasat lanu, the hidden light of ishvi isha zacha shchina shriya b'neim. Very hard to put your finger on it. And a husband and wife can have a phenomenal relationship. On paper, everything can be just fine. But if they don't have moments, at least from time to time, of shchina shriya b'neim, it's not real. It's not really shalom bayis. Shalom bayis, like real connection. This isn't just true for husband and wives. This is true for friends. This is true for chavrusas. Right? To be able to mamish connect for real. To be able to mamish sit with each other and really bond. And what it means to really bond is that all of a sudden it's not me as me with my name interacting with you as you with your name. It's not me as me looking the way I do interacting with you. It's mamish the moment where I realize I'm a soul and you're a soul. And can we finally just drop all the garbage and all the externality and to be completely open with one another, because we're all we have. And if we don't have each other, and if we can't link arms and journey along with one another along this very narrow bridge of life, we cannot make it at all. And that's a moment of shalom. That's shalom bayis. And that's what's going on Shabbos. And these Neirah Shabbos is far more than just there's light in the room, shalom bayis, we don't get angry at each other. Something deeper. Rabbeinu Hananel is telling us it comes from the Or Shivas Hayamim. The Nimsam we find Neirah Shabbos loy niskanu rak bechdei shel lo yitzdaru b'nei habayis b'choshech. That's not the reason that they were niskan, that it was a takana. It's so important to have light in the house on Shabbos because people are tripping over each other. Now, come on, that's really the reason. I mean, okay, I understand. It's important. There's got to be something deeper about it. So he says the real reason al pi pnimi is this changes the way that you look at those holy lights. Changes the way that I look. These past year, mamish Friday night, I have an avodah now. I take them much more seriously because I have a little bit of understanding of the depth of what's going on here. What is this light that's shining off of these candles? What is it? How can it bring me in touch with ba'ar panecha, face to face with Hashem? To be conscious of Hashem's presence. To be conscious of the sanctity of that moment. Friday night coming home from shul, sitting around with family. How can I plug myself into that? How can I be at peace with myself that enables me to be at peace with others? Peace, shalom. Ragua, calm, not angry. How can I get there? So he says over here, the real reason is Elaliska, Hashem wanted to enable us to merit. La'oisai toiv shayibesheshis mebereshis, like Rabbeinu Hananel points out. This toiv, this arki toiv, this incredibly good light that was too good, that's not from this world, it's a heavenly revelation. That's a moment that's qualitatively different than every other moment, a moment where I can be real, a moment where I can be open, a moment where I can be me, a moment where I can be elevated, a moment where I can be essentially in touch with my truest identity. Where does that come from? The Or, he says, of the Shivas Mei Bereshis. And who are shen gonzu HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'asid lavoi. He says this is the light, like we mentioned, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu hid from this world. It's not ordinarily experienced because we live all the time with this worldly eyes. And we're busy working and chores and obligations and family things and a million different issues that we're constantly running around, scatterbrained, dealing with because we are living in Olam Hazeh. So very rarely do we get to really get in touch with this. Halavai shachris min chamarav. Halavai, that I should be able to feel a little taste, even when I say ki ba'ar panecha and sim shalom, I should even know that I'm davening, I'm not like doing something else, right? I should be aware at least that I'm engaged in a holy thing. Ideally. But it's very difficult during the week to live in this way. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu hid it from this world. Who are Arsha Guns HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When did he hide it for? La'asid lavai. For the world to come. It's a Olam Haba revelation. A revelation from the time period that we've spoken so much about in the shiur, where the pasuk tells us, Umala aretz deis Hashem kamayim liyamachasim. When the earth will be filled with the perception of Hashem like water covers the sea. Where we can see the world not as concealing Hashem, but as revealing Him in the deepest way if we're consciously aware of it. That's the Araganas. It's the hidden light. It's beyond things. If we spend time to stop, to pause, and to focus on things, and to be a person that's calm, and to be a person that's settled, to be a person that goes slowly through life, that walks through the park not just with the intention of getting from one street to the next street, but to walk in nature, and to stop frequently, and to look at the plants, and to be mizbonin on things, and to be still, and to experience in that stillness and in that silence the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who's knocking all the time, but we're far too loud, the lives we live, to hear it. Called doidi doifeik. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is knocking all the time. Pischili, let me in. Not a matter of like I have to run after him and drag him into my life. He's here all the time. He's knocking all day long, every day. The question is, like the Kotzker Rebbe said, where is God? Wherever I let him in. Pischili, Hashem says, open for me. Hashem wants a relationship. Hashem is present. Hashem is there. He's knocking. And he says, open up. Open up. The light is hidden for this realm of L'Asad Love, when all of humanity will be living on this level. Shenamar Boy, about which the Pasuk in Tehillim says, Laila Kiyoim Ya'ir. The night will be lit up like the day. The light will be lit up. The night, rather, will be lit up like the day. That's the hidden light, the Aragonas, where all darkness and all physicality and all concealment will be revealed as having been a vessel for us to contact HaKadosh Baruch Hu if we only know how to not give up. How to not give up searching, how to not give up reaching out to Him, how to not give up speaking to Him, how to not give up believing in the world, how to not give up believing in ourselves, how to not give up believing in each other. The Aragonas. See, he says an amazing thing. We know that this world is 6 millennia, and then the next world is the 7th millennia, right? It's the Yemaisa Mashiach, Olam Haba, 6,000 worlds which are connected to the 6 days of the week, and then Shabbos. So he says in the same way, every time that we experience Shabbos at the end of the 6 weeks, it's a little taste of what? Of the Elef HaShvi, of the 7th millennia, of L'Asad Lavai, of the time where it says Laila Kiyayim Ya'ir, of the time for which the Bayar Lekimasa Arkitov was hidden. Shabbos is a 60th Me'ain Olam Haba. So he says every week on Shabbos, if we're privileged enough to be conscious of it, which is the purpose of all of these shiurim, is to help us, because you could keep Shabbos your whole life. And I could keep Shabbos my whole life and mamish not get in touch with what's happening on Shabbos, what's available for me on Shabbos. And the more that I learn about it, the more I'm aware of it, changes Shabbos, every aspect of it, the tefillas and the meals and the concepts of Shabbos and the different times of Shabbos, which all of which, Be'ez Hashem, we're going to explore in these shiurim with Hashem's help. Every Shabbos this is available. A little bit of a glimmer of this great light is shining b'ner Shabbos, on those 2 wicks, or those many wicks, but at least 2 wicks, Zachar and Shamar, of your Shabbos candles in your home. Whoever's lighting the Shabbos candles in your home. That's not just any light that happens to be important to light so that there's no darkness, so people don't spill soup. That light is the Aragonos. That light is the light of Laila Kiyam Ya'ir. That light is the light of Ba'ar Panecha. And we can bask in that light. That's the light that brings shalom between people, that reveals the essence from within people, that enables them to bond together, not just in a technical way of, like they say, coexistence. Crazy, right? Coexist. I exist, you exist, we exist, That's not shalom. That's not shalom. You know, great conventions of nations getting together and signing papers. That's not shalom. Shalom comes from Shemayim. Shalom comes from 2 people holding hands, looking up. That's shalom. Shalom in a house, in a marriage, comes in direct accordance with how much of Hashem we're bringing into the relationship. We're bringing into our relationship. To the extent to which I don't have an ego and you don't have an ego, and we genuinely see ourselves as souls wandering through this world, not for this world where every stupid, petty, little, ridiculous thing makes me fly off the handle. I mean, I'm not here for this. I'm not here for me. I'm not here for Adam Hazeh. This is called peace. We're journeying together. We realize I have flaws, you have flaws. We're human beings. We're souls entrapped in bodies, and we're just trying to make it together. The ring that we put on the finger of our wives under the chuppah. Hariyat Mikudeshes Li, Reb Leibel Eger says, what's a ring? A ring is the letter Samach. What's the letter Samach? Is the pasuk, Soymech Hashem L'chol HaNoiflim. Soymech Hashem L'chol HaNoiflim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu supports us. And what we're saying to our wives, hopefully, when we put that ring onto their finger, hopefully, and again, there are extreme situations, divorce obviously is a big sugya. And there are situations where that has to be the eventuality for a healthy life. But in a healthy relationship, what we mean to say is, we're here for each other always. Soymech Hashem l'chol hanoiflam. Things are going to break in this relationship because that's just the nature of what it means to be a human. I'll break things too, and you'll break things. But what it means to have shalom between us, bringing Hashem into the picture, Shechina Shriya Beineihem, is the awareness that there's more to life than Tuesday night dinner. You understand? There's more to life than whatever small things get in the way ordinarily of a husband and wife being able to connect fully. There's more to life than this. There's life, ba'ar panecha life. And therefore, saimech, let's support each other in this. People make mistakes, that's okay. But we have to be aware of the fact that the mistakes that we make occur on a very low external level of our identity. And there's an essence that goes beyond that. And that's maybe why also we break the glass under the chuppah. It's the same message. It's as if we're beginning with the perception that things are already going to break, right? And nobody has this kind of strange delusion, that everything's going to be perfect all the time. That's okay. As long as Hashem is the center of the relationship, that's okay. This is the light of Shabbos. Hu are yichud hashalim hameir belel Shabbos kodesh. This is the light of the yichud, not only between us and our families on Shabbos, which, like we explained, is true peace and enables us to connect on the deepest level, but it is the illumination of the yichud, of the intimacy between Am Yisrael as a whole, who are the Isha in relation to Hashem. And that unity that exists between our souls and the Neshama Yisera, right? An extra infusion of the source of our souls, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which takes place on Shabbos. Let's go a little bit further. We just have a few minutes left. Menarta the steam of the hidden menorah. Wow, this opened up a whole new door into understanding what the light of Shabbos is. All of us know, Shalom bayis. This is a whole different thing. This is the Araganos. This is what's accessible to us. The Ba'ar Panecha, the light of Pnimius, the light of depth, the light of true intimacy is something else. So he says, there's so many levels of depth here. Because it's known that on Shabbos our homes become on the level of the Beis HaMikdash. I'm always calling it Asadar B'Shvachim, it should really be Azamer B'Shvachim. For Shabbos day, it's Asadar D'Sudasa. But Friday night, it should say Azamer B'Shvachim. Arizal wrote this incredible piyut, which some of us sing. And in it, he writes, Asadar L'Droim Amenarta D'Stima. That I shall arrange in the south of my home the Menarta, which is the Candelabra, Shabbos Candles. The Shulchan Imnama, and a table with bread, but Tzvoina Arshin, I will arrange in the north. What's this north and south? He says it's a reflection of the Beis HaMikdash. The Menorah was in the south of the Eichel, and the Shulchan was in the north of the Eichel. And so the Arizal says, and he brings from the Mekubalim, this is what they would do. They wouldn't just sing about it. Litin as haneres b'tzad darim. They would put the neiros, the candles, facing the south of the house. V'as shulchan bayis b'tzaf, and they would put the table in the north, k'moishaya behechal, like it was in the Beis HaMikdash. Ukumuva b'shar kavanas, and it's brought from the shar kavanas al Arizal, like the Arish and Nag le'echa b'shulchan and dalad raglayim. He would be very careful to eat at a table always with four legs, right, and not a table with 3 legs or some other kind of floating table, which they probably didn't have in Svat at that time, I don't think. But he was very careful to eat at a table with 4 legs, kedugma shulchan shel Beis HaMikdash, because he felt that Friday night his table was the shulchan of the Beis HaMikdash. Once we're referencing the Menorah, if that's what our candles are, so that means a little bit that they share in the nature of the Menorah. And he says an amazing thing we understand from Chazal. Shemenorah lo haya ba tzarech gavaya. He says the menorah had no purpose for the Beis HaMikdash itself. All of us know this. That's why the windows of the Beis HaMikdash were narrow on the inside and very wide on the outside, because the light was needed to shine out to the world. And that doesn't mean, to light up the courtyard so the Levium, Shemer, Pesach didn't trip over each other. Right? Presumably they had torches outside. We're talking about a different light here. We're not talking about a physical metzias. We're talking about the revelation of the Shekhinah and being able to live a metzias of Or, which means warmth, which means clarity, which means openness, which means a glowing coal, which is still young enough for ash not to have grown to cover it over. Right? We're talking about essence, glowing, shining essence. That's the light of the menorah. He says that shone out of the Beis HaMikdash into the world. There was no need for the light of the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. And listen how he goes so far. Mamash, amazing to bring this right over here. Like the Gemara says, really, the Beis HaMikdash needed the light of the menorah. That's not what it was for. Ella Eidasi. What was the menorah for? What was the light of the menorah? It was Eidos, L'chol B'Olam, to everybody in the world. Shashchina Shoyre B'Yisrael. It was the Aragonos. It told us the Shekhinah is with us. That's what those flames on the menorah represented. An intimacy with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what the Beis HaMikdash was, the place where heaven kisses earth. The place where there's total openness. Where a Jew who's so estranged from his essence and who's been sinning his whole life takes a few karbanas and he brings them into this place and he walks out reconnected to his essence. Reconnected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu who loves him. With a renewed connection and a renewed relationship. Clean, clear. With every door open, authentic, transparent to his source, reconnected with his mission. This was the Beis HaMikdash. And all of this was encapsulated in the flames on the menorah, of which our Shabbos candles are a dukma, are connected. And he says, Ukvar noidu dvar hamuflaim shall arrive it. He says it's already known, which, of course, if you know something, it's easy to say that everybody knows, but I certainly didn't know this, that the Ravid says over here, Batama shall davar. What does this mean? That the Beis HaMikdash didn't need the light of the menorah. Sha'or haner hamaravi sheba menorah. Amazing thing. That the ner maravi, the westernmost candle of the menorah, which we know was burning all the time, and we used that to light the menorah every day. Amazing thing. There's the Ravid, Arishan. He says, you know where that light came from? It was beamed like a laser. Bekea. It burst forth from the Kodesh HaKodashim. And from there, we took to light the rest of the candles. What was in the Kodesh HaKodashim? The Kruvim. The deepest relationship there was, which was so deep that even at the time that the Beis HaMikdash was burning in flames because of Sinas China, because we were not at peace with each other, because we started living lives of externality, because we started living lives of darkness, because we started living lives of the 6 days of the week, and not lives of Shabbos, and not lives of Olam Haba, and not big lives of Shechina Shuri Beineihem. Even when the Beis HaMikdash was being destroyed, says the Medrash, the Kruvim were intertwined. Which means that there was an essential point that goes beyond all of this. And that essential point is the Aragonas. Is the way that things should be, is the way that things really be'etzim always are. If we have the good sense to get in touch with that part of ourselves and reveal it and stop living behind masks. Just be open, really open. As open as we can be. As open as we can be. That light came from the Kodesh HaKodashim. The light of an essential bond, of an essential connection, an essential relationship. In just 2 more minutes, he says this is the true essence of what Shabbos, of what the candles of Shabbos are. He says, Shetachlis hadlaka, the whole purpose of the hadlaka on Shabbos is like the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, to make it known, certainly to those who live in the house, but to the whole world. Shabbos candles. Then on Shabbos the Shekhinah is here. On Shabbos, we have the ability to connect to the Shekhinah Kadosha. We have the ability to get in touch with that part of ourselves, which is the ring, which is Soymech Hashem L'chal HaNoiflim. Or no matter what happened during your week, you limp into Shabbos, spiritually speaking, and you get in touch with a place that's already whole. a place that is already enough, a place that is ready to simply be, without any more doing kilu, like we said, kol malachtecha asuya. Kesoid hayichad anirmas b'pasuk, which is reference this incredible intimacy that takes place between us and Hashem on Shabbos. Referenced in the pasuk v'shamru b'nei Yisrael es HaShabbos, like the Arizal says, the words b'nei Yisrael es HaShabbos famously are Rosh Hashanah's bia, intimacy, the deepest relationship there is. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael es HaShabbos. On Shabbos, there's intimacy between Hashem and Am Yisrael. Kedei isa b'zar kodesh b'kisvei hari. We don't have time to do the rest inside. Let me just tell you outside basically what he says. Is that he goes on to explain, you should take the sheets with you over Shabbos, you can finish the rest of the piece. But I think we did the bulk of it, we get the general gist of it. But he goes on to say that this is why Shabbos candles are very different than Yantev. Because on Shabbos, he says, something else is taking place. Something else is taking place which relates to each and every individual. So sure, it's important that there's light in the room, but it's still something where, even though it's a chiyuv on the place itself, from the place where it's lit, just like in the Kodesh HaKodashim, it beams forth to each person. And it's outside the realm of this halachic analysis of, excuse me, I'm having trouble with my voice recently. Is it a chiyuv on the individual, or is it a chiyuv on the house itself? He says each one of us have some part in that. In our neshamas, each and every one of us, the candles of Shabbos are being lit. And even if we come to a place where the candles are already lit, we needed to have had some connection to the one who lit the candles, because it's deeper than simply the pragmatic reality of there being light in the house that's enough so that people don't fall over. It's something that relates to each neshama. We all have a part in this experience of lighting Shabbos candles, which, like he says, brings in the aura of Shabbos in a way that the light of Neris Yantev don't. Because the Neris of Shabbos, unlike the candles of Yantev, encapsulate Shabbos. Yantev is not encapsulated in the Neris. We need to light Shabbos Yantev candles. But he says the Iker symbol, the primary emblematic symbol that we have of what Shabbos is these little, seemingly unremarkable, very gentle, dim flames that are flickering on our Shabbos candles in our homes. That is Shabbos. That is the sum total of what we're supposed to get out of Shabbos. It's the sum total of the message that our neshamas are supposed to be feeling on Shabbos. And if you skip just to the very end, we'll just read one more column on the last page. He says, "L'uvda l'maisa." Here he gets super practical, as he often does, and this is why Rav Kluger is so sought after. And you can see the Torah it's very, very unique, very unique. So just read this one last thing. L'uvda l'maisa. What's the bottom line? V'hine, he says, Leiv yedeh amaras nafshe. He says, Tachlis, all of us understand where we are. Let's be real. When a person hears these things, he learns these exalted things. He sits and he's a little bit bewildered. What does this have to do with me? To live with this level of the araganas like we're talking about, and the shechina and shalom and lack of ego and olam haba, like these are big ideas. These are big madregas. It's not shaykh for me. Let's be honest. I know who I am. The second Shabbos comes in, halavai, even that, we shouldn't be busy with last minute day. Let's be real. The Metzias is not this way, that we're sitting lovingly, our wife is lighting, and we're able to have deep kavanas. It's always last minute stuff, and this one's throwing a tantrum, and this one wants a Shabbos treat, and this is what goes on. Hein kol roish bayis, he says, every person who runs a house, yedea kama pnias halev orch ruach nidrashim lashkiach im kol yeled. Each child, it takes all of our energy with each child in particular to be involved with. And for some reason, that's when all the things really break. Erev Shabbos, the last few minutes when we're trying and we hope, and we never can manage to come into Shabbos ragua, no matter how long the Friday is, and certainly the short Fridays. It's very hard. It's very hard. You happen to go to a tzaddik for Shabbos, or you're in Eretz Yisrael, or you're in Mezhbiz, or you're in Uman, or you're by one of the tzaddikim, and it's your Karasti, or whatever it is. So those places, okay, you feel a little bit Shabbos. Shaykh nigia b'mashu demashu mikedushas ara Shabbos. Maybe then we touch a something of the kedusha of Shabbos. A person in his house. Like, how can I disconnect from the reality and the facts of life? And to go with such lofty thoughts, it's not practical. He says, I want you to remember this, and this gives me great chizuk on many levels all the time. He says, you're not always going to be the age that you are. You're not always going to be the stage that you're at. Ki yoim yavai be'ezus Hashem. Bless us all with this, with all of what this bracha entails. Be'ezus Hashem, those that need zevugim should find their zevugim. Should be zeichet to bring children into the world and to raise them in a healthy way, and to see them get married and to leave the home. Ki yoim yavai, will come a time of bnei bayis yakimu, they're going to be mekayim al kein yazav ish asav ve'ima, they're going to leave. V'hayu mitsuyin ish bebeisai, and then you know what it's going to be? Just going to be each person in their own house. There will come a period of time where you'll have more Yishuv Hadas, and you'll have the ability to put into practice all the things, not just this, but all the lofty avodas that we learn, that we need so much time for and focus for and energy for, and we can't. He says, don't give up. Learn them. Be proficient in them. Yearn to fulfill them. And then when the time comes, everything will fall in. And you'll have the ability to finally put into practice everything that you were yearning for. And he goes on basically saying, like, there are two kinds of people. He says there's one kind of person that the minute that the kids leave the house, he doesn't know what to do with himself on Shabbos anymore. And right away he's busy calling all of his kids, can you come for Shabbos? You coming for Shabbos? I'm so lonely. He says, of course we want our children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren, once we're added to come Shabbos to our house. But he says a person who learns limudim like these, and a person who gets in touch with the pnimius of Shabbos through this kind of Torah, he doesn't need to be occupied on Shabbos or entertained or kept busy. Shabbos itself satiates. Shabbos itself gives us the boost of ki makar ha-bracha. And that's the ultimate bracha I can leave you with and leave myself with. And all of us know how much we need this on every level of our lives. This araganas, this living in touch with a deeper reality on every level of our being. All of us need it. And that's the bracha that I give us, that we should be zeicha to be misboining, to contemplate this Friday night on the Neris of Shabbos. He likens them in a footnote over here, you'll see it. He likens it to Chanukah Neris, and we know that there's an Inyan to sit by the candles and just look at them. He says even more so for the Shabbos candles. Halavai, take the time. Take the time. Stand in front of the candles and look into them. And yearn and daven. And this is what I hope to do every Friday night. Yearn and daven. Should be zeicha that the Shechina should fill our homes. We should be zeicha that the Shechina should fill our lives in such a way that there's no tevaru eish, there's no anger, there's no smallness, there's just the exalted desire to be real, to be open, to be authentic, to be connected to every person, and to link arms with humanity and march toward that time of Laila Ki Yom Ya'ir. Be'ezus Hashem, and also this is a good dogma for thinking deeper in all the different areas of halacha that we learn. When a reason is given in Chazal, good, but now what's the reason for the reason? There's always a why that you can ask deeper than the answer that's given. But why? What's going on in the spiritual world that produced this physical reality? We develop eyes of panemius where we always look beyond the surface. And then we start living a life of art, of warmth, and of clarity. We should be zeichet to a b'siyata d'shmaya. Be'ezus Hashem. Thank you for joining me. L'chaim, l'chaim. This is Rav Kluger. Got to taste a little bit.
Wow.
Ashreini, Ashreini.
The Sedra.
Yeah.
Moshe Rabbeinu, what is it? Seki Toivu, Batitz
Beautiful. Batitz B'neu. Beautiful. Beautiful. Nesmala bayis kulei oire. So it's the light that's gonna.
Oh.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Moshe Rabbeinu, we needed a mask. He needed a mask because the whole Klal Yisrael couldn't look at him because of this Kitoiv of Moshe Rabbeinu's face was so bright. This was the Boy Panecha.
Ba'ar Panecha, you want to say. Gorgeous.
Ba'ar Panecha.
Ba'ar Panecha. Stunning. Take a look if you can in Art Torah from the Baal Tanya. a very, very deep piece, but try to work through it. On the pasuk of Misam Pela Adam in this week's parsha, where he basically says, like going into the whole thing now, he says that Moshe Rabbeinu was an Neshama D'Tayu. He came from a different Metzias B'chlal, not just a higher world. He came from a phase of creation called Tayu. We're now in the phase of creation called Tikkun. His Neshama, and who was the other one? I think him and Enosh were two Neshamas that didn't belong to this Seder of reality. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't speak, because speech is a keli. Moshe couldn't have kelim for his neshama, and Hashem made a miracle that he should somehow find kelim to be in this world. But Moshe, so that connects also. We're talking about an otherworldly light. Shabbos is a taste of an otherworldly light, and we can't have Shabbos be like every other day. We can't be on Shabbos the way we are the rest of the day. We have to be mamish with tears in our eyes the whole Shabbos. We have to be souls on Shabbos. We have to feel the neshama yisera on Shabbos, and it has to bubble over into our relationships. Shalom bayis be'emes be'pnimius. Should be zeichet to it. So if anybody has anything you want to share or ask, I've been speaking for a very long time now. But if you want to share any thought that came to mind, or any question, or any comment at all.
Halakha-wise, what you said earlier on, going back to halakha.
Yeah.
So it happened to me last Friday night. My wife was away, so I lit the candle.
Right.
So there, the halakha is, as you stated, that when the wife learns by Shabbos, she lights and then makes the bracha.
Right.
Why? Because she's in Makabel Shabbos. However,
since you weren't,
men are not Makabel Shabbos.
Right.
We're not Makabel Shabbos, and that's why when men make it, you make it the other way around. You make it like Yantev. You make the bracha first, because we're not allowed to. Nearest by us, by the men, we're not being Makabel Shabbos.
Right. We're dafkanat.
Through that.
We're dafkanat.
Our Kabbalah Shabbos is Ms. Moshe.
Right. Right. Or Baruch Hu, or different shitas about that.
Or whatever.
Amazing, Chevra, what a privilege. Thank you so much for coming. I'm sorry for keeping you over time. It's a very long piece. Usually we do shorter pieces, but I felt like this was like strong. So but the main thing is, remember, spend time by the candles Friday night. Amazing to meet you. Thank you guys for coming.